girls, and welcome to Season 3 of the Hey Girl podcast with my mom, Bethany Needham. Each week, guests will share their amazing stories of following Jesus on all kinds of journeys. I hope their stories inspire you to run your race in your place. Thank you so much for listening.
Hey girls, and welcome to another week of the Hey Girl podcast. I am so excited for this episode because I get to introduce you to Regina Bartlett. I met Regina at Berea. I believe it was a women's retreat, and she approached me after a workshop. I think I'm getting this right, but long story short, she showed me this book that she had written, which we'll talk about in the episode. And just her story blew me away. And basically everything after that I found out about Regina, I am her biggest fan. I've read her book. She sent it home with me. I think I finished it in like 2 or 3 days. I love books that just tell people's story. And that's basically what her book does, but it tells a story, which I don't want to give away, but basically it's pretty dramatic, the change in her life. And Regina just has so much energy and spunk. She's one of those people that you meet her and you want to be around her. You want to be her friend. And so I cannot wait for you to hear this. I will tell you that you are going to experience all the feels in this story. And hopefully by the end, you are going to feel like you just made a new best friend. Without further ado, let me introduce you to my new friend, Regina. Regina, I got to meet you just a few weeks ago at Berea up in New Hampshire, where first time ever I got to go to one of their ladies' retreats and had so much fun. Got to meet you face to face and did not know your story. Which is good because I am like giving this health and fitness workshop thing that I already feel like a million people could teach this like better than me. And then
so good.
But you raised your hand and you shared like maybe an inch of your story, and I was like, what am I doing up here? Like, can I just like high five? I'll sit down, you stand up. But for real. And then I think I mentioned it to my husband, like there was this woman, she was on my workshop, like she shared this little bit, and he's like, oh yeah. And he mentioned that so we were standing in the office, and as we're standing there, there's this sound of like drumsticks in the background. He's like, that's the lady doing this like fitness thing with her church. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Someone was in there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
But it was literally, I'm like, every single little bit I learn about this woman, I am like, what? What the what? Like, what is even happening? And so I got home, we connected on Instagram, and it was so funny because I think you commented on a photo as I was writing you to be like, hey girl, you want to come and be on Hey Girl because they need to hear your story. Meanwhile, you're writing to be like, hey, do you want me to send you one of my books? And I was like, yes, please. So here we are. I have your book next to me, which I have just started because it's been I think I got it when I got home from this last weekend. I already love it. I just started.
Thanks.
I already love it. And I am ridiculously excited to hear your story. I listened to some of your TED Talk because as soon as I meet a human being that is like, oh yeah, I have a TED Talk, they immediately enter another category in my brain, and it's just like unreachable because I'm kind of obsessed with TED Talks.
Oh my goodness, I've been obsessed with TED Talks since 2009. I was like,
were you like crazy freaking out that you got to do one?
oh my goodness. It was such a process too. Like my first TED Talk experience was, her name is Dr. Margaret Wertheim. And if you ever have a spare 18 minutes, she did The Beautiful Math of Coral in 2009. And she's talking about hyperbolic math, how for years people thought you could not get a curve into a straight line. That is the most dumbed down explanation of that. But you have to listen to her TED Talk because she talks about hyperbolic math using crochet. And it is so ridiculously fascinating. It has like, I don't know, like 14 million views, and I'm pretty sure I'm 7 million of those 14 million views. Like, I've watched it so many times because she takes this high level math concept and she's crocheting a coral reef. And in the middle of this, she has a twin sister who's also a mathematician. The Smithsonian calls them and they're like, yeah, we'd like you to make this coral wreath and we'd like to bring it to the Smithsonian. So she's got all of these people crocheting this coral wreath, but she's explaining this whole thing, and I was just obsessed. I sent it to everybody I knew, and that was my first experience with TED ever. And I just knew that I'm like, okay, one day TED Talk, like on the list of buckets, like this is it.
Yes.
And when this is a TEDx, which is a TED licensed event. It's not the big TED yet. Little TED.
I love it. Yet.
But when TEDx Newport was coming, they had, an application process, and I was like, oh, I'll see, I'll try. It's on my little list. It's not quite the big TED, but I'm down for it. So I apply, and it is a process unlike anything I'd ever expected. First, it's like, oh, tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself. I'm like, oh, I can do that. And then it's like,
bait you in.
Round 2. Now I'd like you to tell me a little bit more about yourself, and how about what you'd like to talk about in a little more specific detail. Okay, I got that. Round 3, I felt like I was applying for grad school. I'm like, what are these questions? It was so detailed. It was so incredibly detailed. And I'm like, I don't even know what's going on with this. Like, this is a lot. And then it was right before the holidays, and they send the last thing like, oh, you've made it to the final round. I'm like, excellent. And now we'd like a 2-minute video of you, just being yourself. And I'm like, what? It's like in the middle of like holiday craziness, like all this stuff going on. And I'm like filming a video with my dog. Like, this is myself. This is me with my puppy. Like, unbelievable. And they were like, okay, so you'll find out by New Year's Eve. On New Year's Eve, I must have stared at my phone for about 18 hours. Just like, anyone? And I'm like, I didn't even tell my husband I had applied until I had to make the video.
Yeah.
And so now he's like joining in on the, well, did they call? Did they email? Did they text? And I'm just like, no, they haven't. And I'm like losing it. And then the day goes, and I'm just like, Happy New Year.
Oh.
Didn't make it.
Wah.
So then I get this incredible, and I'm not this person. I would never, I don't know what possessed me to email the organizer. But I was just like, I just want you to know that I love the theme. I believe in what you're doing. I will be there to support you. Even though I didn't get selected, I still think this is an incredible thing you're doing for our community, and I'm so on board. And she messages me back, wait, did I not call you?
Stop it.
I was like, dying. So I ended up making it. But what ended up happening after that was beyond what anyone could imagine. It was 9 weeks before TED, and that becomes rehearsals, speaking coaches, interviews, photo shoots, newspaper things, this, that. It was like, whew,
and
in a second it was gone. Like, you have no notes, there's no note cards, it's all memorization, it's all, and I'm a heart speaker. I do a lot of speaking, and I like an outline, kind of go off of that.
Yes,
we're good. I got a time frame I got to work on. All right, I'm
with you on that.
Not for TED. Word for word has to be impeccably timed, and there's also a lot of rules. And I agree with it. It's TED's brand. It's what they're very particular about what you speak about and how you speak about it and what can happen. But it was an experience. It was such an experience. And I highly recommend anyone, if there is a TEDx in your area, anywhere near you, apply, because it's an experience like anything else.
Amazing.
It really is.
Now I want to try out for a TED Talk. Like I do and I don't. You both inspired me and terrified me in one story. But before we get to TED Talk, I just literally want to know all the things, Regina. And I have been waiting for this moment since I met you 2 weeks ago. basically my whole life. My whole life. So take some time. Tell us your story.
Well, it started way back in Brooklyn, New York. No, let me stop. So I was
If you're
born in
going
Brooklyn.
Yankees on me, I am shutting this sucker down.
Go Yanks!
I knew it.
I know. I'm a transplant Rhode Islander. So I was born in Brooklyn, but we did move here when I was 4 years old, so I really am a Rhode Islander at heart. My sister moved to Boston for college. She's a total Red Sox fan. I don't know how she's failed our family like that, but she has.
I love your sister more
She's
than you.
amazing. We forgive her, kind of. So
Clearly there's
a little resentment there, just a tad. But we did move here when I was 4. So I was raised in Rhode Island, and I absolutely love Rhode Island. I am the 6th of 7 children, and so we went from Brooklyn to my parents thinking we were farmers here in Rhode Island, which is like classic. It wasn't as shocking for me because I was so young, but for my older brothers and sisters, it was like, what are we doing in the woods? Like,
Yes.
It looked like they were permanent Fresh Air Fund kids. So remember the Fresh Air Fund? They were like, what is this? So it was definitely a different experience for them. But I grew up in the woods, so that was like not a thing for me.
I feel the need to tell people who've never heard of this. Fresh Air Fund is an organization that brings inner city kids out to suburbs, whatever, these areas, to give them an outside of the city summer experience. Like, you take a kid for a week. If you have a pool, you bring them on vacation, whatever. That might be the best Fresh Air Fund joke I have ever heard in my life. Well played, Regina.
Thank you.
Well played.
And so that's how we were raised out here and stuff. I ended up going to college in Pittsburgh. I came back to Rhode Island, went through all kinds of craziness in my life, and the church was a part of my life when I was growing up. I selected church, which was different for a lot of people. As the 6th of 7 children, our house was always very active, and I am a fake trovert. Like, I am an introvert, but no one ever believes me. So I would be very inward. I was always like in my room. I loved to read. And my brothers and sisters were all very outgoing. They were also like these tall, beautiful, athletic people. I was like short, fat, into books. Like, it was craziness. I always felt like I was a little on the outside looking in at everything. And so I started going to church with my neighbor. I started going to Catholic church when I was about 11 years old. And I loved it. And what I loved about the church was that it was quiet and that there was a routine, especially in the Catholic Church. There was a lot of routine. And I really responded to that routine at that age. It was great. And then there's some parts of it in the book where my friend was killed in a car accident. And it started like a rift with me in the church because I just couldn't understand, like, God, really? Like, why? And at 12, you don't have like a full functioning adult rational mind. And I was still new to the church and all of that. So it really put a wedge with God in me there. And I continued going to church and to catechism for a while. And then I just completely fell away from the church entirely. When my children were born, my daughter really liked going to church. And I didn't mind her going. I wasn't going, but she was perfectly fine to go on her own. So she went with my mom's best friend, and they would go to the church that we attend now. And she went there for years. And so my mom and her best friend have been best friends for 40 years. And when their granddaughter was in a play at the church, they asked if we wanted to go. And I was like, of course I'll go to the play. So we go to the play, and I grew up Catholic, and this play was about the rapture and all this stuff. And I'm like, wait, what? What is happening? I am sitting there like, I have a list of things to Google when I get home. Like, I don't know what is going on in this play right now.
This wasn't the play with the guy screaming that's in hell, being like, why didn't you tell me?
Oh, no, this was it was the woman that does the plays at our church now. She wrote this play, and it was very powerful. It was very good. But I was like, whoa, I feel like everybody's knowing what's going on here, and I'm kind of in the dark. And at the end of the play, the pastor comes out to talk to the people, and he's like, and I have this new believer's Bible. If anybody wants it, come on down. And I wanted it. I was not going to get up in front of all those people and go get it. That wasn't going to happen. So I'm like, well, too bad for that book. I was interested, but not interested enough to put on the spot like that.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. And then my daughter goes, well, you went to the play. Did you like the play? I said, I actually really liked the play. Googled Up a Storm when I got home. And she goes, do you want to go to church? And I was like, she never asked me to go before. So I'm like, you know what? I will do anything for you, my princess. We will go to church. And my husband and I were both like, well, if the walls cave in when we walk in, just know that it's us. Like, we did
It's not
this.
you, it's us.
And we weren't even married at the time. We were completely cohabitating. And cohabitating. And we were engaged. And it was just like, one of our first conversations was, how are you with God? He's like, oh, I'm not a big fan of God. I'm like, me either. Awesome. So we don't have to worry about that again. Like, seriously, we were like total like atheist twins. Yay, let's move on with our lives. And so now here we are, these two, like, I used to call myself a recovering Catholic, and we're now going into this church. And
But it wasn't a Catholic church.
No, not at all.
So.
No, we go to like an evangelical church. And so we walk in, and again, I grew up Catholic, he grew up Episcopalian. We get there, and the screen comes down, and the words are on the screen. And
I wish people
my
could see your
husband.
dramatic hand motions to this. It's like,
I look at my husband, we're looking around, and everyone's like singing and clapping. And I look at my husband, and I go, Jesus karaoke? He's like, right? And we are just like, what is happening here? But the two people who were leading worship were husband and wife. And when I tell you, I have no idea what was happening. I just knew I wanted some of it. Like, I don't know what's going on, but it was beautiful to me. And so we go home, and we both have that like reservation of, well, we were both like, you know, team no God. Like, now, like, I really want to say something, but I don't know how he's going to be. It'd be really awkward if it wasn't like equal. So we waited like almost a couple hours, and I was just like, so, you know, what'd you think about today? He was like, I kind of liked it. I'm like, me too. Shut up. And so he's like, do you want to go back? And we've never left. We have never left.
how old was your daughter when she invited you?
14.
14.
14 years
Man.
old. And she had been going to that church at that point for probably 7 years. And we never went anything. And so it was just, and she was never like in plays or anything like that. She was always doing like, they did youth group and stuff. And she'd gone to Berea. I think my daughter went for 6 straight years. They would go to deep freeze with the church, signing permission slips left and right. Like,
Yeah. Have fun.
zero
baby.
interest in going. And so it was really eye-opening that we were both very convicted at the same time. And so we started going to church more regularly, and they do this like an introductory class for new people to the church. So we took the class, and we had it at our house. We decided to host because my husband loves to cook, and he loves having people. So he would have these like lavish meals prepared for our face-to-face group, which was the name of the group. And it was about 10 families.
Yeah.
And they would come to our house, and, you know, we'd learn about the church and, you know, the tenets of what we believe and stuff like that. And it was all very, very interesting. And I started feeling really awkward because I'm sitting there, and there's all these people around my dining room table, and I'm like, do they know we live here together?
Oh, yeah, because you're not married. Okay.
So we were just sitting there, like, and
This
I
story
am,
gets
like,
better and better.
and I'm like, kind of like low-key horrified. Like, what do they know? Like, I don't know what they know.
Yeah.
And so we met with the pastor, and we were getting married the following October.
Yeah.
So, and this was, we started at the end of the previous year. So it was probably like October, November-ish we started going. And so this was probably in like February or March of the year that we're getting married.
Okay.
And so we're like, okay, like we need to like understand like what's happening here, because I'm like freaking out, like what is going to happen. So we talked to the pastor, and he goes, okay, we know that you both live here. I'm like, okay. he goes, you're also not Christians, not attending church, like, and things have changed drastically for you in the last few months. And he said, you know, you have to do what's right with you and what's right with God. And that is between you and God. And you know what you need to do. And so we started maintaining separate bedrooms. And it was actually challenging. Not in a sense of like, you know what I mean? It was just...
Well, yeah.
Because, you know, you're used to living your way a certain way. And then it was like, oh my gosh, like, what? But we consider that to be almost the most sacred time because it was like a challenge for us. And we were still going through we started our marital counseling, our premarital counseling in the midst of all of this. So it was really neat. It was like a neat time of like pause. And it was kind of like us getting closer to God, and in a sense, closer to each other in a very different way. And we consider it one of the highlights of our relationship was going through that time. So it was nice, and everyone was very supportive. And
I would think it'd be challenging because how long at that point had you lived together?
Oh my goodness. Almost 2 years.
Okay. And you have a daughter, like, I don't know why Song of Solomon's running through my head, but like there's a reason that they say like don't awaken love before it's time. But the reason being, once you've kind of stepped into that, to then have to not just hit the brakes, but
and
like...
we have separate children. We don't have any common children.
Yeah.
So he has 4 children. He was married before. I have 2 children. I was never married. He was married in the Episcopal Church. I was never married. Had all that going on. So we had some significant things going on in our lives.
Yeah.
So it was very different, and our relationship was very bizarre. Like, I am not an easy person to get to know, especially in like relationship wise. I was always very heavy. And so you're very cautious. It's always like, you know, I could never online date. Like, I feel like it'd be like, oh my gosh, you're like amazing. Your personality's great. And then they see me and be like, are you kidding me right now? So I was always like, I never wanted to put myself in that position.
Yeah.
So when we met, you know, and I don't know if you've ever seen my husband, but he's tall. He's handsome to me anyway. He doesn't have a weight problem. And I always wonder, like, you know, what is wrong with this guy? Like, there's got to be something wrong. Because, like, what is all this? Like, do you really like me? Like, come on. And we were friends for the entire summer. And I just never thought that he would like me like that. And I invited him to go somewhere. We met singing. And I invited him to go somewhere with me. I was doing a fundraiser for a cancer charity. And I was like, you know, this is where I'm going to be if you want to be here. And he was like, yeah, I'll come down there. I'm like, oh, awesome. And we had been friends at that point for like 3 or 4 months and just totally platonic, hanging out friends. And he got lost in downtown Providence, which is comical because he lives in Cranston, which is like 1.1 miles from Providence. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? You are lost. He's like, I'm circling around Washington Avenue. I'm like, this is hysterical. I'm like, please just stop the car and I swear to you, I will find you. Like, it is not that big of an area. You can't be that lost. And he's 6'5", and with a cowboy hat, he looks like he's 7 feet tall. Like, it's comical. So I'm walking down this alley, and I knew he would be coming from where he said he parked the car. He'd be going through there, and it was like midnight, and it was dark, and there was like alley lights, and it's like out of a movie, like the smoke coming out of like the manhole cover. I'm not kidding. Like, it's in the book. It's hysterical.
And are you feeling romance? Because I'm feeling like Law and Order Special Victims right now. Dun, dun.
But it was so weird. Like, he like then comes through the fog, and I am just like, oh my gosh, he looked mammoth. Like, it was just hysterical. And I go to hug him, and he kissed me. And I was like, what? Oh, all right. Like, what's happening? And it was just so weird. I'm like, how long have you wanted to do that? He's like, since I met you. I was like, are you kidding me right now? We were inseparable from that point on.
What?
Like, literally inseparable. Within, I think, 4 months, I sold my house. He was done with his lease in his apartment, and we rented a house together. Like, who does that? Who does that? People don't do that.
Regina, you do.
Yes, I do. And clearly it works out. And I was never that person. I was never like, oh, like we would talk and I'd be like, and these are like all the secrets of my life. And he's like, oh, here's mine. And we're like, oh, we still like each other. Like, it was just bizarre to be that open and that just cool with someone. And so by this point, when we were going to church, we'd been living together for almost 2 years. Our wedding was less than a year away. We were getting married on our third dating anniversary-ish.
Was this the anniversary of the alleyway?
Yes, it actually was the anniversary of the alleyway.
Did you get married in an alleyway?
We did not. We got married by the beach. But it was like, so it was like this whole thing. It was really amazing. If it's one thing I learned through this whole process with this time that I spent away from God is that I spent time away from God. God was never away from me.
Preach.
Never, not 1 second. And it's like, wow, God had my back for years, even when I was so obnoxiously not on his side at all. But there were so many things that we look back on, and it's like, oh yeah, yep, that's God. Yep, there we go again. Yep, we can chalk that one up to God too. Okay, we're good. So it's nice that we were convicted together and we started this whole new adventure together.
So you definitely got married.
Yes.
How long have you been married?
This October will be 7 years. And it's our 10th anniversary together. So we're excited.
That's
very
incredible.
Excited.
And people are going to be like, oh yeah, this is her major story but girl, you have been on a journey.
Yes.
And you mentioned, like, straight up, when you met your husband, you were overweight, like you weren't going to be doing any online dating, but your journey with your own health and everything else, just lay it out for me, Regina, lay it out for me.
So I started gaining weight when I was young, and it was something that all of my brothers and sisters were athletes, and I was never an athlete. And so I was always like in the house. I was always comfortable reading. I was always comfortable alone. And as I started gaining weight, I wasn't really aware then of what I was experiencing was anxious behavior. And, you know, in the 80s, I don't even think I understood anxiety. I don't even know if it was like a thing like it is now.
I don't think it was.
And so I remember the first panic attack I had, I was 11 years old and I thought I was having a heart attack. And like most children, of course, that means I don't tell anyone I think I'm having a heart attack. I will just lay calmly on my bed and apparently die because I never said a word. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. And for years, when I would get these like crazy bouts of panic attacks, I had no idea that that's what they were. I thought I was having some sort of like massive health trauma that, again, I would never speak a word of. As it continued, eating became like a coping mechanism for me. It became like everything. It was, you know, how I handled good days, how I handled bad days, how I handled loneliness, how I handled anxiety, how I handled feeling inadequate. Like all of these things, food, it didn't matter what the question was. Food was always the answer. But it becomes this thing, you know, and looking back, and it was one of the things I had talked about in the TED Talk, was that I see now that what I was doing was mitigating anxiety with food. So if I was feeling a way that I didn't want to feel, food would put distance between me and the feeling. And so I would eat and I would feel better, and I would continue to eat and I would feel better. And then I would continue to eat and then I would feel horrible. And then I would feel guilty and I would feel ashamed. And then you'd feel these feelings that you don't want to feel. So what do? You eat. And I spent all of this time doing that. And you know, I remember when I was 12, I was told I was grossly overweight. I was 148 pounds. And at 12 years old, I guess that's heavy. But wow, did you have to go there like that? Like,
seriously.
Well, that's not slightly damaging, nurse.
Who shall not be named.
Right? She's named in the book. No, she really isn't named. It's just the thing. But it was like, it was hard to hear. But it didn't stop the behavior. And then by the time I was in high school, I was about 200 pounds. I was still like captain of the cheerleading squad. I had a bunch of friends. I don't think I was ever really picked on for my weight. It was more of how I felt about myself more than what anyone else would say or treat me. And then when I started having children, that's when it just really got out of control. But I was also a single parent. I had 2 kids. I was horribly overwhelmed. And that was how I was handling everything. And then it's almost like you don't believe that it's happening. And I don't know when it happened that one day I was like 400 pounds. Like, when did this occur? And I couldn't get weighed on an office scale. And they told me that I could make an appointment at the post office.
No.
That's nice. Was
it that same nurse? Because I'm
No.
about ready to
No.
lay a smackdown.
It was unbelievable because that's tough.
Yeah.
It's already one thing to not be the all in a one size fits all. It's another thing to, I can't buy clothes in most shops. So we're already on a trail of like demoralizing things happening to human beings. And then to be like, well, how do I get weighed? He's like, oh, you can make an appointment at the Central Post Office. They have a freight scale and you can get on the freight scale. And it's like, oh, with cattle and jet engines, that's lovely. That would be a great thing. That sounds like a wonderful plan. And I am just like...
He is a lucky man that you had not started karate at this point.
Right?
Oh, my
So
word.
it was really hard. But then you hear these things and you think like... oh, why isn't that enough? And people are like, why isn't that enough? Like, when was the end? And it's like, when you're swimming in a sea and you're just barely, like, getting air, it's not like you can just stop. And then you get, all the people with all the answers, because they're my favorite. I love them. It's the, oh, sweetie. Just eat 3 small, responsible meals a day. Hello. Oh, is that all? Oh my gosh.
What
Did
have I been
not
doing
think
with
of
my
that?
life?
Like my entire life with the food pyramid since, I don't know, I was born. Yeah, I get it. It's a calories in, calories out game. But there's so many more things than that. And so I tell people, it's like, would you look a heroin addict in the face and say, honey, I need you to take 3 small, responsible hits of heroin a day and you'll be fine. Right? Like, you would never say that. You would never say that to a person.
So true.
But that's the answer that everybody has. Everyone has this magical answer and that's it. It's like, no, there are so many other things involved in weight loss. And not all heavy people are food addicts and not all food addicts are heavy people. But when you have an issue with food like that, you have to understand what the underlying behavior is, or it doesn't matter what you do, you are never going to make it through. And it's important for people to understand that, which is why I was so open with my story. Because now here I am. I'm over 400 pounds. I am saved. I was able to give so many things to God so easily, so freely. Past hurts, past behaviors, forgiving myself for things I've done, forgiving other people for things that were done to me. My weight was never a part of that equation. Ever. I kept it tight-fisted in my hands. It was my problem. It was not God's problem. It was mine. And I don't even think I realized how much I was doing that, because I thought that I had given everything.
Yeah.
And I really didn't. And it wasn't until my 42nd birthday. Now, the beginning of my book starts out with how I almost fell down the stairs. It was a very challenging day because I literally thought my daughter was going to find me dead at the bottom of the stairs, which was terrifying, a thought. And then she took a picture of me. And I saw the picture and it completely destroyed me from the inside out. I am a person who can be very social. I can be very funny. And I've always used humor with my weight as like a levity point, because if I say something, it's a lot easier to deal with than if somebody else said something. Yeah. So I'll cut you off with the past first, point out the situation, we'll all laugh at it and kind of move on with our day. So not being in that position of control with how that image looked or anything, it was like, oh my gosh, this is the real me. This is what I look like. I looked tired. I looked exhausted. I looked huge. I took up the whole futon on the side of my office. It was absolutely horrifying. The picture only went to my mother, and I was absolutely floored. I couldn't even stand to look at it. I also couldn't delete it. I could not delete it. And it just kept playing in my head. And I'm like, I need to do something. I have to do something. How long am I going to do something? Like, I've tried everything. I've literally tried everything. And so when, people think about weight loss surgery, there's such a divided camp on weight loss surgery. And people always think like, oh my gosh, it's so drastic. Can't you just eat 3 responsible meals a day, honey? And so it's all of that. And so you feel like, I should be able to do this. I can do this on my own. I am not that bad. Like, I'm not that bad. I can do this. I can do this. And then I was reading like all of these things because I was at a point where I needed to recognize that I needed to do something. And this cardiologist wrote an article about how drastic everyone thinks weight loss surgery is. He's like, it's so drastic. He's like, but every day I take a vein out of somebody's leg and I put it in their heart and nobody says that's drastic. Now, when you think about that, now if I had to have a heart bypass, no one would say a thing. If I had a heart attack tomorrow and they gave me a heart bypass surgery, no one would have anything to say. You say gastric bypass, everyone's like, oh, couldn't you just do it by yourself? Like, why would you do that? That's so dangerous. That's so dangerous. And it was like, that really opened my eyes. Like, this could be a life-saving medical procedure. I can't think of it as this elective, easy way out that a lot of people think it is. And I used to think that. So I can't even fault people for that mentality. I used to think like, oh, cheating. Of course you can lose weight. Anyone can lose weight when your stomach's the size of a walnut. Like, come on. But then you realize that there's so much work involved in it. There's so much stuff to do. And when people ask me, which is a very legitimate question, like, well, if it's so much work and you have to do all of this stuff, why couldn't you do all of that stuff before you had surgery? Which I think is a fair and valid question. And I can only speak for my own surgical experience. But what I can say for me is that the surgery is a tool in order for you to kind of get a handle on things. It's not a forever thing. It's not a magic pill. You will have to manage this forever. But what it did was it gave my stomach a break so that my brain could catch up. You can only physically eat so much at the beginning, no matter what you do. There's only so much capacity that you're working with. And so I had to, in that time that they call the honeymoon period of weight loss, you had to kind of get your life together. You had to figure out like, okay, how am I going to get all my water in? How am I going to get all my protein in? How am I going to get all my vitamins in? How am I going to get moving? How am I going to do all of these things? And so I got to set up a course for myself of how I'm going to live. And some people go like full tilt boogie crazy. They drop all kinds of weight and then they fight and claw to maintain like is almost impossible weight standard. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do things kind of in measured spaces. So I lost a good amount of weight. It's like, okay, well, can I stay here? Can I be happy here? I'm a person who would have given my eye teeth 10 years ago to be a size 26. So, am I going to be okay at a 20? I'll be okay at a 20. All right, so now can I exist as a size 20? Yes, I can. Am I healthier? Yes, I am. Am I ready to do something more? Yes, I am. So then you do a little more. And you just try to live your life in that space. At my heaviest, my waist was 59 inches around. That is an inch under 5 feet. I am 5'5". It is incredible. I was almost as wide as I was tall. And now I'm about a 12, 14. I am now at a space where it's been probably almost 2 years I've been at this size that I'm ready to kind of amp it up. Am I healthier? Oh my goodness, yes. Am I happier? Absolutely. Are my numbers great? Yes. So can we do a little more? Yes, we can. And so I'm taking it in stages so that I know that I can maintain and I'm not like clawing to keep some sort of craziness that also may not even be my body type. I'm not a tall person, but I'm a bigger person, and that's just who I am. And as long as everything else is healthy and I'm doing well, I'm okay with that.
And part of that measured momentum that you had was actually training and running a marathon, which like I can't even imagine the emotion and thought for you to go from that moment on the top of the stairs, like in the book it talks like your knee kind of gave out. And for anybody else, and you actually say that for anyone else that's a smaller size, you're like, wow, this is gonna hurt. But you recognize in that moment, if I fall down these stairs, I actually might not survive.
Absolutely.
Like, this could be the end for me. And that's hard if you've never been in that scenario, to wrap your brain around what you were going through, and then to fast forward this journey and you are running the New York City Marathon.
Crazy.
Just, do you have words? I don't have words. Do you have words to describe like how that even felt to cross that finish line?
It was the most incredible feeling. As a person who's battled with anxiety for a very long time, I spent a long time running away from a lot of things, especially when my anxiety was really bad, when things were really overwhelming. We're looking at 15, 16 years ago. I was in a very dark, very uncertain place, and my phone ringing, I would feel like I couldn't even catch my breath. Like I didn't even want to answer the phone. And some people don't understand what that feels like. That fear was a gripping part of my reality for a long time. And some people are like, oh, I'm afraid of that. It's like, yes, there are things that are fearful, but a deep, paralyzing fear is something that I don't think a lot of people really understand how debilitating that can be. And that's where I spent so much time. And during that time, I would avoid responsibilities. I would avoid things that I should be doing, things I knew I should be doing. And I still couldn't get the strength to do it. So when I started running, and I didn't even want to go outside. Like, I used to walk in front of my television. That's how I started, because you were not going to see me on the street. I didn't want anybody laughing at me. And I did a half marathon when I was 330 pounds. I did the Hyannis Half Marathon here in good old Massachusetts. And I did it in 2008. You can look it up. I was dead last. Like, I was lapped by a woman who was like 85. It was very comical. Very, very humbling. It's like, I was 35 and I got lapped by a woman in her 80s in a half marathon. But I just wanted to like see if I could do it. I was always blessed with being pretty ambulatory despite how big I was. But 330 pounds is different when you add another 100 pounds on that. I called it earning my TV. So because I could watch TV professionally, like Nielsen should have been paying me for many, many years. So I would watch TV, and I wasn't working at the time. So, my husband's a saint, by the way. So I would like literally sit at home and watch TV all day while my poor husband was working. And I was watching TV and I was like, okay, I have to start moving. And so when my show was on, whatever I was watching, I would just walk side to side. And when a commercial came on, I could sit down, I could get some water, I could do something. But when my show came back on, I was back on and I was going side to side. And it was startling when I had surgery, I was confronted with something that I did not expect. And that was just how much time I spent with food. I was like, I have nothing but time. Like, where's all this time coming from? Because if I wasn't actively eating, I was preparing, thinking about I was always in a perpetual state of food. And so I had surgery and my husband comes home and I'm like, I need to get a job. And he's like, whoa, like what is going on? I'm like, I have way too much time. Like I had no idea how much time I spent dedicated with food. It was crazy. At that time, we lived right by the ocean. And so there was a private beach on the other side of our house. And there was like a little pond between the private beach and our house. So my first goal, the pond was a 1/4 mile. I can make it 1/4 mile to the pond and back. That's a 1/2 mile. Okay, I survived. And then I would start going to the private beach and then to the ocean. And then next thing you know, I'm doing like 3 miles, 4 miles. I'm like, who is this person? I don't even know. I always wanted to do like a whole marathon. Like literally since Oprah did the marathon, I wanted to do a marathon. And I was like, you know what? I have to keep moving. Moving is essential to this whole process.
Yeah.
Because, you have to move.
Yeah.
And I'm good with a goal. And I'm one of those people that if I pay for something, I'm doing it. Like, I don't care what it is. Did I pay for it? I will show up for that.
Yes.
So I paid for my New York City Marathon. I register, and my friend was going to go. We were doing it for a cancer charity in New York. And she was like, oh, I was supposed to do it in 2012, but Hurricane Sandy came, so I still have my entry. So do you want to do that? I'm like, okay. And she was living in Minnesota at the time, and I'm in Rhode Island. So you get like, the whole running plan and all this stuff. And you just start. And it's crazy. I will never forget the day that I worked 12 hours at work, and I came home, and then I ran 8 miles. And I get back to my car, and I'm like, what just happened? Like, I couldn't get past stair 5 at my house. Like, how did I just do that? I can't believe I just did that. And it was really beneficial to just keep that momentum. So running became like this really powerful place for me. But more than that, it was probably the most spiritual place I had. Because when you're out I used to run on the bike path. So South County has a 7-mile bike path that has mile markers on it. So if I had to do 14 miles, I'd just run to the end and go back. So it was nice. I didn't have to like clock anything or do anything. And that was my time with Jesus, like uninterrupted. The bike path is, there's very few bikes on the bike path. Seriously, South County, get with it because it's amazing. But so I was out there virtually alone so many times. And it was just this beautiful sense of peace and just clarity. You get so much clarity when you run in everything. So I loved it. But then when I got to the marathon, body image issues don't just disappear. I was always the largest person in a room every time. So even though I'm not so much now, you still feel like it. Like, I still check chairs, which is something that like really heavy people do. I don't know if like non-heavy people realize that most chairs are classified for 250 pounds. So when you're over that, you have to be very cautious because you will break a chair. I've broken plenty in my day, and it's horribly embarrassing. So I'll never sit in a camp chair. I actually sat in one this summer and I was like cautious the entire time. My husband's like, are you kidding me? And I'm just like, no. He's like, seriously, you can sit in the chair. I'm like, I don't think you understand the horror of a camp chair for somebody like me. So I would still like, do a double push on the chair. Like, is this gonna hold me? We good? So you still have like those behaviors and thoughts and things that you do. And so I had to kind of remind myself that runners are a place like, when you go to races, it's almost like a convention for no body fat. And like everyone there is like impossibly like svelte and beautiful. And then here I am bounding in, and they have divisions. I don't know if you ever run. They have divisions. Sometimes it's a beautiful word like Athena. The Athena division is the heavyweight women's running division. At Hyannis, it's called Philly. Yes, like a horse. So the Philly division is for your heavier runners. And do you know what the heavy runner weight is?
I am afraid to guess.
Oh, it's precious. It's precious. Are you ready? 140 pounds. I'm like, oh, so my leg can run in the heavyweight division of this race.
You're kidding.
I am dead serious. Like, dead serious. But the men's heavyweight, which they call Clydesdale, because that's very masculine, the men's heavyweight division, I believe, is 225 or 250. The women's heavyweight division is 140 pounds. Like,
okay, girl, high
really?
five to the Phillies.
Let's
do this.
So I'm here in my 2 Philly status at Hyannis. Like I'm 2 of these Phillies that you've got working with. Actually, more than 2. I'm like 2.5 Phillies running this race. And I actually met the nicest woman because I thought we had to weigh in. Like, this is so embarrassing. Like, do you ever look back on something and you're like, wow, that was so dumb? So
my whole life.
Right? So I'm in the race expo at Hyannis, and it's like tons of people. Again, the no body fat convention in full effect. And I'm looking for where you would weigh in for the Philly division, and I can't find it. So this woman is there, and I'm like, excuse me, do you know where the check-in is for the Philly runners? And she goes, I don't think there's a check-in. I said, oh, do we have to weigh in? She goes, I think it's more of an honor system. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, okay. As I'm there, I'm like 330 pounds. Like, oh, sweetie, you don't have to. Like trust me. Like, they gotcha. So I was so, after the fact, I'm like, wow, she was exceedingly kind to me because she could have really, done some legit damage to my psyche before this race. So it was, hysterical. So I had to get it in my head, going to New York, that it was, again, going to be a place where there's going to be some super fit people who are running marathons. You have to understand, I couldn't do 26 miles in 2 hours on a bike. Can we just establish, that? I'm like, okay, I will be last, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I will probably be the biggest person there, and I'm okay with that. We are doing this for charity. We're doing this for my personal well-being. We are doing this. I look around, and I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, please. I am not close to the biggest person here. Every person here has a reason for being here. Everyone has, whether it's a personal goal, whether it's a physical goal, whether it's they're running in charity for someone who lost someone, no matter what they're doing, they have this reason for being here, and it is powerful and it is beautiful. And here I am in the last wave, in the last corral, with all of these people with something to prove to someone somewhere, and it was the most powerful thing I'd ever seen, because everyone was just doing it. They were just doing their thing. But there were so many other ways that God has blessed me on that run that is just, it's incredible. And you see people and you experience things and you hear their stories, and everybody has this incredibly beautiful perspective. And I was always really shy to talk about my anxiety or to talk about my weight or to talk about any of those things. But I discovered that when you share, it says, we'll be saved by the blood of the Lamb and our testimony. And that is so true, because every time I share how I have lived my life before and how my life has drastically changed and how surrendering to Jesus and surrendering my weight to Jesus was a completely different surrendering experience, that has made my 30 years of obesity have meaning.
And I just appreciate you so much coming on here and being willing to share for our listeners. And I think we'll absolutely, definitely going to tag the book and the way people can reach you on social media. I would encourage our listeners, because I feel like this is one of those where I'm like, oh my goodness, I have 1,000 million questions that
all day too. I'm sorry.
No, as in, there's just so much good. And I feel like on not just weight loss, but just your whole journey and story and what people can take. I have never wanted to run a marathon in my life until the last 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, before I let you go, though, we got to do the rapid fire questions, because now I need to know these things about you. So tell me, you're driving. I almost have my answer by looking at what's right in front of me, but you're driving. It's a cold day. You need a hot drink. Are you driving through Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Dunkin' Donuts all day, every day.
New England.
Yes.
But you're going to have a conversation with a gal pal. Nothing deep, nothing heavy. Would you rather text or call?
Text.
Yes. I told you. We are it's meant to be. If you're taking a long road trip with your hubby or whomever you would consider to be a very responsible driver, would you rather drive or ride?
Ride all day. I am the navigator.
Oh, this is second navigator I've had on. If I were hypothetically to hand you $100 right now, and I say, girl, you can only use it for something fun, what would you do?
Skydive.
Stop it. I think I'd want a more expensive trip than $100 if I'm jumping out. It would be like $1,000 parachute on my back, yo. Skydiving, really?
There were so many things that I couldn't do because of my weight. As I lost weight, I had goals. So in order to skydive, I had to be below 240. In order to take the flying trapeze class, I had to be below 180. So I had all of these things that I would do. So yeah, high ropes course, all this stuff. I love it.
So you want to have you skydived? Have you done
I did a baby skydive. I have not done a full plane jump, and that's next.
What's a baby skydive?
When you
like
do
a baby
like the
plane?
huge bungee, it's like 400 feet and you jump. So it's tall, but it's not skydiving.
Counts for me. But yep.
Love it.
That gives me heart palpitations. Regina, this has been kind of phenomenal.
I loved it.
Just saying. So thank you so much for being on today. Can't wait for our listeners to hear this, and you should probably prepare yourself to get some messages, because I have a feeling they're going to be coming your way.
Anytime.
Okay, there was like 1,000 times in that episode that she could have dropped the mic. So I'm not even going to try and recap or say something profound, because I'm pretty sure she covered all of it. But can I just take a moment to plug her book? And not because she asked me to or expected me to, but I just think in this woman's life, all the things that she's walked through, the courage that she's shown, and then for her to have the discipline to write a book, an entire book, she's my hero. Okay, so Food, Sweat, and Fears. That's the name of the book. And the little tagline, from 425 pounds to the New York City Marathon. I mean, honestly, if that wouldn't already capture your attention, I hope you go out, pick it up, whatever you need to do, read her story, reach out to her. She's great at social media, on connecting, on responding, and keep watching, because I don't want to give it away, but I do follow her on social media, and she has definitely set a pretty epic goal for the next big thing in her life. So check her out, Regina Bartlett, and then go get her book, Food, Sweat, and Fears. Can't wait to introduce you to our next guest next week. I am telling you, the stories this season are just going to blow you away. So, as always, praying for you this week, wherever you're at, wherever God has you, that you're running your race in your place and you're being awesome for Jesus. Bye, listeners.